Well, good morning and welcome to Full Potential Fridays. My name is Heidi Denning and I am here with my incredible co-host Nina Mapson Bohm. And for the next 10 minutes, we are going to share a shot of inspiration and practical strategies to empower you and your team. Nina, what have we got in store for everybody this morning?
This morning, Heidi, we have one of my favorite topics, demystifying difficult conversations. And I love this topic because it's actually something that most people hate. And don't get me wrong, I don't like a difficult conversation as much as the next person. But I love having a methodology, having a tool that you can use to try and help with these situations, because I think the key is really how we go about this and how we can make it easier to have difficult conversations. Now, tell me, Heidi, are you someone that relishes a difficult conversation or do you hate them as well?
I definitely do not relish them. No, I do. I find difficult conversations difficult. And this is why I am really intrigued with all the information, all the golden insights that I know that you are going to be able to share with myself and all the leaders and teams who will be watching this. So tell us your first point, Nina. What do we need to know?
So the first thing is with difficult conversations is that you need to tackle them in a timely manner. The thing that actually makes difficult conversations difficult is that too often we leave them too long. And I learned this from a fabulous guy, Ronnie Alteet, who's the CEO of Incentra, and he talks about the pebble in the shoe analogy. When we have a pebble in our shoe, we need to take the shoe off and shake it out. And it's a bit uncomfortable, sure, but if we get it out early, we can get the shoe back on, we can keep going. The problem is that what happens if you leave the pebble in the shoe, it becomes a blister. And then if you leave it in for even longer, it becomes a proper sore. And eventually you end up in real agony and real pain, and it becomes a much bigger issue than it needed to be. And I think that's the challenge, is that most people wait till they're in significant pain before they take the pebble out of the shoe. So I love this idea of actually thinking, can we do it a bit earlier? Can you think of an example, Heidi? Have you had a situation where maybe having a conversation earlier would have helped or could have helped or did help you in the past?
Yeah, look, I think, as leaders, we all need to recognize that our work life is not our whole life. And that for many people at various times in their life, they have a lot of personal challenges. And it gets really difficult to be able to compartmentalize those problems that we have at home and not let them infiltrate into what we do during the day at work. And I think as a leader, the struggle I've had is if I actually do know that there is something going on in one of my team members' life and things are really tough for them, I do put off that conversation. And rather than perhaps starting it a little early, because I know how tricky things are for them, but what happens is instead of being there as a support early on to go, right, there's lots going on, you're under a lot of strain, how can we be flexible here at work that will give you a little bit of leeway so overwhelm doesn't, come in, but also allow you to fulfill the responsibilities of your role and not let anyone down, because when, people let people down, they feel worse about themselves. And then there's this cycle going on. So I think certainly for me, it's about the fact that I perhaps haven't started those conversations a little earlier. I've put them off until they can then become a problem.
That's a great example. And I love that, Heidi, because it kind of ties nicely with the advice I give people to try and help you have it earlier, is just to start with the line, can we have a slightly uncomfortable conversation now so we're not having a much more difficult conversation later? And sometimes if you just kind of use that sentence to set the kind of groundwork, lay the expectation, people are like, oh yeah, what is it? I'd much rather, whatever the issue is, I'd much rather deal with it now than have it become a snowball effect. So it's a great example where if you kind of say, let's talk about the uncomfortable, let's talk about the elephant in the room, let's chat about it now so it doesn't get crazy. So that's a great example. Thank you. The second thing I want to share with you is a bit of a technique into how to actually have the conversation. So we run training on this, and we actually have a tool called the B.O.N.E methodology, partly for my name, partly for the fact that bones are really, strong and resilient, and they're what hold you up and keep you going. And I'm going to share two of the letters of the acronym with you today. So my second point is the O, which stands for obtain information. And the reason that that's critical is so often when we're having a difficult conversation, it's because we've made assumptions. We've made assumptions about what we think has happened or how we would react in a such situation, or assumptions about what their intent is, or as you've just pointed out in your example, there may be something going on that we don't even know about that, is kind of, so we're making often assumptions. So the first point with Yo, it's actually the second point of the methodology, but it's crucial, is ask really good questions. Ask lots of questions and try not to jump in. Try not to, start accusing. Try not to jump in with emotion. The more you can ask and get really good information from the situation, the much better you can deal with that conversation. Can you think of an example, Heidi? Is there a time maybe where you didn't do that and it actually ended up being a worse outcome as a result?
Well, as I look at my book over my shoulder in the screen, it reminds me of when I started the process of writing that book, and I went in a coaching program because I had no idea what I was doing. I'd never written a book before, certainly didn't consider myself an author of any capacity. So I went and, sourced out somebody who could help me. And of course, they gave me all the inclusions of this program up front. But in my excitement that I was about to write a book, I just kind of skimmed through it and didn't read it all the detail. And what happened is when we got to the end of the process, I knew that I had, in those kind of inclusions, there was something about the editing process. And in my assumption, because I didn't obtain the information that I should have, I found that what they described as the editing process was all about just a grammatical process, that I had written my sentences properly and my spelling was correct. And of course, I definitely needed help with that. But in my mind, I had thought someone would go, you know what, Heidi, that story makes no sense. You need to rewrite it. Or that strategy is good, but perhaps if you did this, that, and the other, it would be a lot clearer to somebody else who was reading it. Or, my gosh, you don't know what you're talking about. Sit down and spend a few hours on those pages. And so, for me, I didn't obtain all the information, with that situation. By the end of the process, even though it had been amazing, I was like, I feel a little let down by it. So,
yeah, great example. Thank you. And that's it. The key is getting as much information as you can, either up front or then if you go to readdress the issue, asking all the questions to get more information at that point in time. So, yeah, that's great. So the third point today, and the third letter in my B.O.N.E acronym, is for N, which stands for nuanced solutions. Now, the word nuanced is really crucial here because often when we're tackling a difficult conversation, we often kind of are too wedded to what we think is right rather than actually coming up with the best solution. We come up with a solution and then we get very wedded to our own solutions being the correct solutions. And the point of nuancing your solution, it has to come off the back of obtaining the information, is that you do actually listen and you do come up with a solution together that works for everyone. And sometimes we call that a compromise. Sometimes it might be about getting the other person to see it from a different perspective, or sometimes, horror, shock, it might be that you have to change your perspective because perhaps the issue is you, so but this is the point with the nuance, and this is where being really good at this comes down to the that understanding. I was listening to Andrew Banks yesterday and he said something that really struck with me, which was talk like you're right, listen like you're wrong. And I love that because I thought that's so powerful to kind of create robust discussions, to actually try and get those nuanced solutions out there. So, Heidi, can you think of an example? Is there anyone you can think of in the, in your personal experience or the world experience where they've kind of really come up with good nuanced solutions?
Yeah, look, it reminds me, and it's probably a really big nuanced solution rather than a little one, but Arianna Huffington started the Huffington Post in 2005. And, within a couple of years, she was on the front page of all the magazines. Time magazine had said she was one of the most influential people in history. And, she just had an organization that many people would dream of creating in that kind of time. But what had happened to get there, because of this definition of success that society has, that you've got to work really hard, and she was working 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, and one day found herself on the floor waking up in a pool of blood because she passed out from exhaustion and burnout. And for her, it was one of those real awakening moments, because she was able to say, in fact, this is not the solution that I want. This is not how I want to define a successful life for me. If I've got to do that to get to there, forget it. I need to adapt. I need to change what I'm doing and make sure that this solution for the fulfillment of having a successful organization is different. So she then started Thrive Global, and they've done things very differently. In fact, she has made it her mission to help organizations to prevent them from having the situation she had, and helps them create high-performing teams without leading to exhaustion and burnout. So I think that is one of those solutions you're probably talking at a bigger scale, Nina. Is that right?
I love it. It's like a lifetime of nuanced solution right there. Okay, it's great. Well, look, that's kind of, I guess, a few of the tips that we can share. As I say, the 3 from today, tackle them in a timely manner. If you want to do really good, difficult conversations, tackle them in a timely manner. And then 2 of our 4-step methodology: obtain information and nuance your solutions. And there's more to it when we train on this. It's much more in depth than that. But even if you start with those 3 things, it will really help you. And I guess as to wrap up, it would just be really important to say, if you want to find out whether this is something you're good at, if you want to find out if you're reaching your full potential, we fully encourage you to go to fullpotentialteams.com.au. You can download a scorecard there to self-assess how you're going with your potential. And this is one of the many subjects we can help you out with if that's something you want to find out more about. But we look forward to hearing from you. If you watch this video and you're inspired to comment, we'd love to hear about what you've learned and what you're doing as you're kind of taking some of these tips on board. And there's many more resources on the website there. So thanks very much for listening. Thank you, Heidi, as ever, for your fabulous contributions. And we will see you all on a video soon.